And now, it's time once again for the show that gives glorious voice to 25 million business owners across the fruited plain. Radio Free Enterprise with Frank Felker.
You know, there's one type of business that almost anyone can start. And it's both unique and ubiquitous. And that's becoming a real estate agent. I say ubiquitous because as of their December 2016 report, the National Association of Realtors says that there are 1,233,704 members of their group, which are individual real estate agents. And it's hard for me to think of another vertical industry where you could find over 1 million individual owners. At the same time, though, becoming a real estate agent is a unique business because of the relatively low amount of investment of time and money required up front when you compare that to the upside income potential, which is quite tremendous. Today we want to talk about what's the difference, what makes a top producing real estate agent somebody who really leverages everything they can out of that opportunity. And I can tell you from my perspective, I've worked with hundreds of real estate agents, brokers, lenders, trainers, title companies over the years, and I've come to my own conclusions regarding what differentiates top producers from the rest. But fortunately, today we have an actual expert on the topic here to share their wisdom with us. Dan Rochon is a top producing agent himself and the founder of a unique approach to residential real estate marketing called Greetings Virginia. Dan Rochon, welcome to the episode.
Good morning, Frank. Hi, thank you for welcoming me.
I'm so glad that you're here, Dan. I want to get right into this right away and start with what the definition of terms. How would you define what a top producer is in terms of, well, in your own terms? Would that be the amount of volume of transactions they do, the amount of money they make? What's a top producer from your perspective, Dan?
That's a great question, Frank. So, and thank you for that. So the word, top producer, it really needs a little bit of parsing.
Okay.
What exactly constitutes the top? It really depends on who you ask. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, it depending on the company that you're with, the real estate company or the time span or the geographic area. Yet what we find is that as a solo agent can, at the top of their game, do around 36 closings, buyers are selling closings a year. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now certainly that's going to be different if it's, the price point is 500,000 or the price point's $1 million or 200 or whatever the case may be. What we find here in Northern Virginia is that the average price point is around the 350 mark, somewhere in that range. And that what we find is that agents that are around that $12 million production level that have not hired an assistant, that have not, really built out a business, that we find that those agents typically are, really sort of doing a lot of work and are maxing out around the $12 million of volume here in Northern Virginia is what we find.
Okay, so as you say, it depends on who you ask or what geographic area you're targeting. But it sounds like 36 transactions, one side or the other of a real estate transaction. That sounds like a lot of work. 3 closings a month if you're handling everything from marketing and lead generation and bringing those deals in to walking people through houses and getting to the closing table. That's a lot of work. So whoever's doing that clearly is running around.
Absolutely.
And so then at that point, here in this area, $12 million a year at average 3% commission for one side of a deal, that person would be generating around $360,000 in commissions. Does that sound right?
Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark. And again, there's certainly more opportunity to have a greater upside than the $360,000. Yet, at that level, you're going to have to make sure that you're putting all the right people in the right places and that you're going to have people working for you in the administrative roles, the marketing roles, and even as a buyer's agent role. But going back to that $360,000 that is potential for just a solo agent that's really just working hard, busting their bump, they're really just getting to work on it. They, that $360,000 would be your gross commission, and then certainly there's going to be cost of sales and expenses and that type of thing that's going to be reduced from that, just like any other business.
Great. So like at that point, as you are referring to it as a business, it really becomes a business. That's your that's not your income, that's your gross revenue, and you've got expenses that are going to come out of that, and you're going to net out whatever you can from there. Now, before we go further into that, I want to ask you whether or not, because I do, from my own observation, see a relatively quite small number of top producing agents and a seemingly huge number of not top producing agents. Is the 80-20 rule apply here? How would you say the percentages break out between those two groups?
Well, Frank, I would say it's more like a 97-3 rule that applies. Mm-hmm. And that's, if you're looking at top producers, really there's a lot of people that get into the real estate sales business that do not succeed. And that's the reality of it. And I believe it's because that many people may underestimate the work that goes into, to be successful in this business. And it really, you need an insane work ethic. You have to be never willing to give up. You have to be highly competitive. You got to have a ridiculous positive and happy attitude. And, and those are the qualities that it's going to take to be able to be successful in this business. And we find that few are able to reach that level.
It's interesting because those same traits would certainly support someone's success in any business that they were looking to go into. And in fact, are absolutely required when it comes to persistence and never giving up. I think that's one of the clear differentiators between successful entrepreneurs and others.
Absolutely. I believe so as well.
So we talked a little bit here about, if somebody who's just completely doing everything on their own, have yet to set up a team. And we'll talk about that as far as setting up a team and people underneath of them in just a moment. But for somebody listening who has considered trying real estate agency in the past, or maybe tried it and just kind of dipped their toe in the water and fell out, what exactly is the upfront investment of time and money in order to get your real estate license?
Sure. So if you're starting from scratch and you need to get your real estate license, then you would have to go through a curriculum, of course. It depends on what state you're in. Here in Virginia, it's a 60-hour curriculum, which, again, is a relatively low barrier to entry. In fact, I teach that curriculum. I've taught around 250 people to actually become real estate agents. And you go back to that 97-3 rule or 80-20 rule. Of those 250 agents that I've taught across the years, there's probably only around 25 or so that are actually still in the business state. And of that 25, there's maybe 3 or 4 that I would consider like top producers.
Wow. That's almost like 1 or 2%.
Yeah, it's pretty low. But Frank, going back to, the financial cost to get started, it's a few $1,000s when you're looking at board dues, when you're looking at, money that you're going to pay to the broker to get started and just the initial investment. And it's really more of a time investment rather than it is a money investment. And what I mean by that is that when you start in a business, one of the things that I would coach you to do is really start, in prospecting rather than marketing. And what that means is the prospecting is going to cost you time and marketing costs you money. And so, so certainly it does cost a few $1,000s to get up and running, and that's going to be situational depending on the brokerage and whether you join a sales team or whatever the case may be. Yeah, it's really going to be more time invested rather than anything else.
It's interesting the way you put that, the difference between prospecting and marketing. I really like that. And it's something that occurred to me when you said that, is that I meet a lot of people who want to go into business, and in their mind, when they think of having a business, many of them, they picture a retail store. It's bricks and mortar and et cetera. And it may well be a franchise. And this would require a tremendous investment of purchasing the franchise and paying ongoing royalties and doing the build out of the retail space and so forth. And while several $1,000s, as you mentioned, to get started as a real estate agent is not nothing. I mean, that's real money. It's quite insignificant compared to what other people may be spending to get into a business that may not have the same upside income potential. The point I'm driving at is this, is many people open a retail store because they like the idea they're not going to have to go out and talk to people. People will come to them. They don't have to actually, get toe-to-toe and belly-to-belly with strangers and try to strike up a conversation, which is what it sounds like you're recommending that someone who wants to succeed in real estate needs to do.
Absolutely. Unless if you have a lot of money to invest into marketing in that year. And if you do, I would hope that you have some experience in marketing, because certainly if you're jumping into marketing with little business experience, then you're going to probably be spending way more than what you could, if you take the time to learn what's effective. But going back to that initial investment, I mean, before I started in real estate sales, I looked at all those franchises. Now, I'm a franchise owner today of a real estate brokerage, yet when I first started, I looked at, Quiznos and Five Guys, which are great franchises. But what I found out was it would be like $250,000 to $500,000 of an investment to get started with an upside of around $70,000 of revenue.
Wow.
And when I looked at the real estate, you're looking at like $2,500, of an investment to get started and no limitations in regards to the income earning potential. Even going back to that 360 we were talking about earlier today, that 360 is if you did it as a solo agent, you can certainly leverage out where you can make $500, $1 million, $2 million. I mean, I know agents that make, $3-4 million of commissions every single year.
That's fantastic.
Great upside.
Well, let's talk about that. It's a perfect segue, because the next thing I wanted to talk about is we know that we've got this person, they're churning and burning and doing 36 transactions a year, but they've topped out in terms of the number of transactions they can handle and the amount of money they can make. When somebody makes that turn to start to build a business with employees underneath of them and start growing, what are the types of steps that they have to take? When you look at somebody who's a year or two into having made that decision to grow their business with a team, what does their team look like after a couple of years?
Yeah, that's another great question, Frank. So what I see is, and I'll tell you the way that I see others do it first, or what I see many do it first, and which is not what I recommend. Excuse me. And what I see is that many agents will hire a buyer agent to work for them because they don't want to take the investment of money and hire somebody and have to pay them a salary or by the hour, or whatever the case may be.
The buyer agent would work on commission.
Oh, that'd be correct. Mm-hmm. Yet what we found is that really the first hire that a real estate agent should make would be an administrative person. Mm-hmm. And the second person that a real estate agent should hire should be a transaction coordinator, another administrative person. Mm. Okay, so then at one point one of those administrative people will sort of take a leadership role, and then the other will sort of take a marketing role where you have one administrative person that's going to be in charge of making sure all the transactions are done properly, et cetera. And then you're going to have another administrative person that's going to make sure that all the marketing, that the voice of the company or of the agent is told in a manner and told effectively and told to as many people as possible, so that more business can be generated. Then your third hire would be a buyer's agent. And that's what I don't often see agents actually go through that process. Yet what we found is that when you do go through that process, that is the recipe for success.
That's great. And then from that point forward, they would then just begin adding on additional agents under them and then maybe grow the admin staff as needed?
Yeah, that would be correct. And then at some point in their business development, they would have an operations department, they would have a lead generation department, and they would have a sales department. Mm-hmm. So all the salespeople would fall into the sales department. All the administrative people would fall into the operations department. And then all the lead generating staff would fall into the lead generation department.
This makes me think of the book, The E-Myth, about how somebody transitions off of the story of a hairdresser who wants to open her own salon, or an auto mechanic who wants to open his own shop. What they find out is that running a shop is an entirely different thing than cutting hair or turning wrenches. And so I can see where, as this top producer transitions from doing everything themselves to becoming more of an entrepreneur, that they need to kind of have a little bit of a mind shift and start handling different tasks. And that brings up the question. So if they hand off the admin to this person and the transaction facilitation to this person, what role do they focus on then?
Well, they would focus on leadership. They would focus on lead generation. They would focus on accountability, to making sure that the people that are working with them or for them are producing the results that they agree upon. Mm-hmm. And those would be the areas that at that level that top producer would be focusing on. Now, one of the things you have to remember is going back to that $360,000 producer, that individual without that help is working 14 hours a day, 365 days a week. Mm-hmm. So certainly they're making a nice, tremendous amount of money. Yet what we find again is that when you're able to leverage it off and put the right people in the right place, then you're able to get more done more effectively with better standards and actually work less hours. So one of the things you have to remember, Frank, is people do not hire me for me. People hire me for the standards that I represent and the standards that my company represents.
And by people hiring you, you mean people buying and selling homes?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And that's what I mean by that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this has been very interesting. We've kind of walked through a person getting their license and, moving up to 3 transactions a month and then making the transition to grow their business even further. And talked about the relatively low investment required to get in and the incredibly high income potential. Let's talk about this. This is really the crux of the biscuit, I often say, is what's the difference between the 3% who are the top producers and the 97% who aren't? Why? How can it be that so many people, 1.233 million people, are members of the National Association of Realtors, and yet only a couple of percentages of those people make everything out of it they can? What's the difference between the mindsets?
You just said it right there, mindset. It's the way that you think. So top producers think in the world of possibility. They think in the world of learning, of competition, of working as a team. They think that it can be done. And yes, there may be obstacles that come up, yet when those obstacles come up, what is the solution to this? How do we overcome that solution? How do we, how do we overcome that problem? How do we solve that problem? And that's the way that a top producer thinks. And then secondly, it would be who they surround themselves with. So I heard Tony Robbins say, I was listening to a podcast with Tony Robbins the other day, and he said that 97% of success, whether this is in personal relationships or business relationships or anywhere else, is determined based off of the people that you surround yourself with. So if you go in, get into marriage with a beautiful wife like I have, then you're going to have an easier marriage, than if and that's, it is about having the right people in the right place. All people are beautiful beings, yet, it's putting the right people in the right place so that, that you can work together.
So what about on a day-to-day basis? I definitely hear what you're saying in terms of they think differently and they react differently. But what are they doing on a day-to-day basis, the top producers, that others are not?
Well, so and you said it. So it starts with a foundation of who they're going to be, and we just talked about that. And so then that leads into what are they going to do, which is what you're asking me about now. And what a top producer is going to do on a day-to-day basis is they're going to lead generate. Now that can be lead generating for sellers, and it can also be lead generating for talent. So what we find is that the top producers focus on 3 areas. They focus on leads, listings, and leverage. Now, earlier on in my career, I misunderstood that perspective. I thought that the top producer, and that was my intention to be a top producer, was to focus on lead generating for listings, and then you just sort of look at the leverage that by the way. And what I have found through the years is that the leverage is just as important to lead generate for the right people as it is to lead generate for the listings. And then secondly, the other part of leverage, besides the people that you surround yourself with, are the systems that you incorporate into your business. So when you have great systems and you have great people and you spend the majority of your time lead generating for listings, you can have a great business. And that's what the top producers do that I see.
It's interesting. You remind me of something. I've been observing real estate agents for a long, long time. And every time I've met a top producing realtor, I've asked them the same question. Let me tell you where it came from. I was always trying to sell marketing materials to real estate agents. I was in the printing business. I, for a while, was involved with the real estate training business. And so anytime when I was trying to market products or services to realtors, I found that only the top producers really had any interest in looking at anything different or new, or had any money to spend on it. Of course, whether you have the money or not is what you say, not what's in your pocket. But so as a result, I realized that other than the top producers, The other realtors were it wasn't worth my time to try to target them. And then, of course, I realized everybody else in whatever industry I was in was targeting the top producers for exactly the same reason, because they were the only ones who would invest. So the question I would ask every top producer was, did you start out investing in your business and that's how you became a top producer? Or are you investing in all this money in your business now because you can afford to, because today you're a top producer? Invariably, the answer was, I always invested in my business from the very beginning, even when I didn't have any cash flow happening. So it sounds to me like because you use the word business all the time. Would you say that a big differentiator is the fact that top producers view what they're doing as their business, not just something they're kind of dipping their toe into?
Absolutely, Frank. I mean, it is a business. You know, I mean, it's following, proven models. It's finding a superior way of doing real estate sales. And because we treat it like a business, we're able to be organized in a manner that I told you before, is your people hire us, buyers and sellers hire us for the standards that we represent, because, I'll be candid with you, Frank, you don't want me going out to your house taking photographs. Right? I mean,
so the best photographer.
so you want to make sure that you have a professional photographer on staff that's going to go out and they're going to do the marketing, and they're going to measure the floor plan so they can do a blueprint to post online, and and that you have a specialist that's going to be able to, even a buyer's agent versus a listing agent, there's different behaviors that are successful in each. A buyer's agent is going to be slightly more relationship based, and a listing agent is going to be slightly more assertive, yet they both need both those qualities, or we find when they have those qualities that they're going to be more likely to be successful. But those are the things that we take a look at.
That's great. So you have the right person performing the right task at each step within the transaction.
Oh, absolutely. And then, of course, throughout the entire transaction, I'm overseeing everything. So my job in a transaction is really to make sure I'm negotiating, to make sure that I'm getting the very best deal for my clients, whether it be a listing client or a buyer client, and making sure that I represent their actions so that I have their interest in front of all other people's interest, including my own. I mean, we're there to act on behalf of our clients in a manner that's going to serve them the best.
That's tremendous. And it really comes through in your words, the passion you have and the fact that this is actually what you do and what's important to you. And I would imagine in terms of leverage that the referrals that you get from past clients, buyers, sellers, and what have you, the flow of it is much stronger because of such a genuine and positive experience that they've had working with you guys.
Well, it's a lot easier to get referral business than it is to get new business. So when you give your clients a superior service, and when you come from a place of contributing value, from contribution and value, and it's about what can I do for you? How can I make your experience the best experience that you could possibly have, and communicate the expectations? Say, when we deliver on this experience, you're going to find somebody that's in a market to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate. And I would love an introduction to them. And when you introduce them to me, I'm going to treat them like gold. I'm going to make you look good, and I'm going to update you throughout the process. And what we know is really that making you look good is really the most important thing to a person that refers as a client.
That's great. I like that. Well, I want to get back now to our mythical real estate agent out there who's doing everything they can to become a top producer. Not everybody has the opportunity to work for a Dan Rochon. I'm sure there are other Dan Rochons out there, but not everybody's going to be in the same geographic area with you, Dan. Is it true that aligning yourself as a real estate agent with one broker or one office versus another broker office can have a big impact on your overall success?
Absolutely, Frank. I mean, without a doubt, it's I'm not here to pitch Keller Williams Realty yet. That's the brokerage that I've been with for my entire career. And what I have found is that when you're with a real estate brokerage that is an intra-dependent company, where the agents are partners with the broker, and where it's a learning-based environment, that you're going to be able to do more business, to be able to learn some of these concepts that I was explaining to you on this podcast in a more detailed way, in a more intimate way, so that you can really embrace some of these concepts. And that's what I have found has been a really key to the success that I've had in this business. And that's not to say that that's the only way to do it. I mean, certainly there's pros and cons of every single type of real estate brokerage. And it's really up to the individual to, the individual agent to find out, what it is in that broker that would be a benefit for them or possibly a con for them. And I would share this with you, though, however, if you sit down with a broker, if you're interviewing for, to join a brokerage, and that broker does not ask you something along the lines of what's important to you, what are your goals? If they're not asking you those questions, then that's something that should cause you pause in the conversation.
That's interesting. And that makes perfect sense. Any other things that red flags, green lights, that a new agent who's going in to interview with an office or a broker might be on the lookout for?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's about finding, I would say first identify your needs. Identify, do I want to be in a relationship where I'm getting fed business, day in and day out, or often rather. And if I am in that situation, then I'm going to have less control over my business, and I'm going to make less money per transaction. Mm-hmm. Or do I want to be, so that would be what we call a dependent-based model. Or do I want to be independent? Do I want to be like, hey, I'm going to do my thing, Mr. Broker, you stay over there. I'm not going to worry about becoming educated, and maybe I end up paying you, Mr. Broker, Mrs. Broker, a little bit less money. Yet I'm just pretty much on my own, and that's what we call as an independent brokerage. Mm-hmm. And then the intra-dependent brokerage is that we're going to teach you how to do this, not just how to sell real estate, but how to build a business, right? How to create a business that is designed to serve you in your life, so you can have a life worth living. Because that's the purpose of a business. The purpose of a business is to fund a perfect life.
I agree.
That's, in my opinion, what we're in business for.
Mm-hmm. I love that. That's great. Very well put. Well, so let me just recap that. So the person should start with, what is it that I want? Do I prefer the dependent, independent, or intra-dependent type of business relationship? And then be looking for a broker and an office that matches that need.
I would say that's accurate, yes.
Excellent. Now, I wanted to take some time here before we wrap up, Dan, to talk about Greetings Virginia, which is a new concept that you put together for marketing residential real estate. What is Greetings Virginia?
Well, the Greetings Virginia Sales Network has actually been in business since 2007, and we've been ranked as one of the highest producing teams here in the area. Mm-hmm. And our vision for the company is to provide world-class solutions, to be the real estate sales team of choice for both home buyers and home sellers in the state of Virginia. So we intend to be omnipresent in regards to real estate sales in Virginia, so that when you think about somebody that's going to buy a home, sell a home, or invest in real estate in the state of Virginia, or the Commonwealth of Virginia rather, that you think of Greetings Virginia.
Interesting.
Right, now we intend to be in 27 locations across the state, so we have opportunity across the entire state, and our intention is really to open up the doorways for our clients and to open up the doorways for those on our team. So in other words, we are looking for team members that are looking to embrace possibility, that are looking for the very best in their life, and the Greetings Virginia Sales Network is a vehicle for that, for those individuals.
So would it make sense to say that the type of people you're looking for are the people who are looking for an intra-dependent business relationship?
Not just, yes, Frank, absolutely. People that are looking for an interdependent business, that are looking for a vision that's big enough that they can achieve their goals within that business. Mm-hmm. That are looking for an environment that surrounds themselves with winners, with a proven systems, in a place that they can actually have fun, where they don't necessarily call it work, right?
Right.
My idea is if you come to work any single day and you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't feel great at work today, or I felt like I worked hard, or whatever the case may be, then maybe it's not the right role for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just maybe it's you you should have fun every single day that you come to work. And, we're looking for people that are looking for a place to, build a business and a career they're not just looking for a job. And that's who we're looking for.
That sounds great. And it also sounds like that you'll be able to match somebody to their specific talents and life objectives to plug them into a spot that fits them.
Absolutely. I mean, as long as, what we're looking for is we're looking for people that like to learn. Mm-hmm. We're looking for people that are competitive, that are team players, that are outgoing and charismatic, and that are assertive, and that's who we're looking to align ourselves with and are looking for opportunity, and have a record of success in sales. And it doesn't necessarily have to be real estate sales, though that it makes a more predictable for their success because it goes back to earlier in our conversation about how few are actually successful in this business. So it is better if they do have success in real estate. And we could take an agent that's selling 12 houses a year, and we could take them and move them from 12 to 36. But the difference is the 36 that they would be selling, in an organization such as the Greetings Virginia Sales Network would be that they're not working those 14 hours a day because they have all the support. They have all the staff, the administrative support, as well as the lead generation support to support their own lead generation activities as well.
Wow, that sounds very attractive. Well, Dan Rochon, we are just about out of time. If you were to leave someone listening with one piece of advice about what they could do today or tomorrow to start making that leap to top producer level, what would that one piece of advice be?
Oh, goodness. All right. I'm going to held to one piece of advice. All right. Well, the one piece of advice would be to think of yourself as a top producer. It goes back to the way that we think is what defines the top producers and
the mindset.
Absolutely. And if you see yourself as that top producer on day one and you be who that top producer is going to be and you do what that top producer would do, then you're going to have the results that a top producer is going to have. And that would be what I would suggest.
That was awesome, Dan. I could not have asked for a better response to that question. Before we sign off, if somebody listening would like to get in touch with you and find out more about joining your team, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Frank, I would suggest visiting our website, www.greetingsvirginia.com. And greetings is plural and Virginia is all spelled out. And scroll on to the bottom of that page. There's a little section that says we're hiring, and it will describe some of the opportunity that we have with our company and the steps that somebody would go through to be able to apply for an opportunity.
Okay, and so then they're going to fill out a form, or what happens?
They would fill out a form, yes, and all the directions are right there on the website.
Great. So they go to greetingsvirginia.com, scroll to the bottom of that page, and look for We're Hiring.
That's right.
All right. Well, I will put that on the show notes page for the podcast.
Thank you.
Dan Rochon, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
You can't seem to turn a profit? Is that what's eating you, Sparky? Well, you've come to the right place. Radio Free Enterprise.